We're sliding good right now.
Working with large live edge slabs requires a lot of patience, especially during the drawing process. And sometimes when we have customer orders who have deadlines, we have no choice but to throw slabs to the side and start over with a new piece. And that's exactly what happened on this build for our customer's dining table down in California.
Maybe like starting to dry out and then they like open the door.
Yeah. Hit a high number in there, you started moving slow.
Yeah, I thought I saw 14.
No, that's the thing, is the top layer could be dry.
Yeah.
It's not even reading in the middle.
It's really thick.
Once we flatten it, we'll double check it.
So even though we knew what was probably going to happen, we decided to take these slabs to the CNC machine anyways, hoping for the impossible that there would somehow be less moisture on the inside. And that was impossible, like we thought. There was even higher moisture content in the areas beneath the wood where we surfaced, so we had to try and find a slab that was of comparable quality that this client would accept, and fortunately we had the perfect piece of Claro walnut in stock. Now, this didn't have the exact same type of figuring as those other black walnut slabs, but it did have something called crotch grain. So what causes crotch grain is when you have two limbs of the tree that come together and you get this really tight, compressed, dense wood where those branches meet. Our process for this table begins by breaking the slab down into its rough size so that it fits in the mold. Now, this client wanted to maintain as much of that beautiful grain as possible where the two branches came together. So we're essentially just cutting about 6 inches to a foot off that end, and it'll give us a little area for a resin fill on the end of the table, but also maintain that really pretty grain. Now, you might be wondering, why couldn't we use those slabs if they were wet? Like, what is really the big problem if that's going to happen? So we've done it a couple times before. Shamefully, we didn't check the moisture on some pieces. Now, we stood behind our product with these tables and in some cases even replaced them, which we have videos of on our channel. But if we were to go ahead and pour this table, it might work initially. It might even work for a couple months, but it's almost guaranteed that it's either going to cup or bow really, really badly across the width primarily. And then in a worst case scenario, we could actually see this resin separate right off the edge of the wood. That would take a lot of moisture content to see something like that happen, but for those reasons, we do not work with anything that's above 10% moisture content. Now, this feels like deja vu, but this time we actually know that the slab is completely dry. And in my opinion, once we surfaced off this material here, I think this might even be a better candidate than what we had picked before. Personally, I really like the tables where the majority of the layout is solid wood. The other one was kind of this double river layout, which was very unique on its own, but just my personal preference, there's something really special about just taking a large slab and filling in those imperfections.
Watch your fingers.
And this one has a base layer where it's got like drops of different color.
Yeah.
Because John said they wanted kind of like the Union Roofing, the base layer.
More like Daniel.
Okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah, but a base layer.
Okay.
Except she has sent a drawing that shows where she wants what colors.
He did the same thing, it just doesn't stay.
Okay, and like I explained that to her, I sent a photo of his table and I was like, you know, the guy had one thing in mind for, if you have one thing in mind, don't expect it to stay the same way.
Well, that one he gave us a full-on drawing of stripes and dots of where he wanted everything.
Yeah.
I poured it where he wanted everything.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like that.
Yeah.
Base layer will honestly be a little bit better because it won't convect as much.
Yeah, it's not going to get as hot. So.
And like, we could be smarter and pour, well no, because I was going to say we could pour one color now and one color tomorrow, but if she wants it like meeting, you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's got to be all at once and then just hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly.
We can just turn air conditioners off, fans off, and the cooling off.
Yeah.
Just try to cook it, warm it up fast.
Yeah.
But
grab the sander.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just a merc,
Yeah.
you have back here?
How's that? Close time my finger, right there.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, there's a whole bunch of shit.
Right. There we go. Here. I got you. Keep your hand up.
Cool. Okay, are we?
I can lift
push
from
us
here.
in place up here. And then we gotta get wedges. There we go. So we are gonna fit. Nice. Well, we can just put that one here, I think, and then I'm just gonna basically hold this with a hammer or with my hand.
You wanna
So it's gonna drop and then we're gonna land on that. Okay.
Oh, it's like black.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just gonna take over this.
100%. Just like the blue ate the silver in that table, the black's gonna eat the blue here.
Yeah. She knows it's unpredictable. So
If we check it and make sure the temperature doesn't rise, but let it sit in the bucket long enough that it might start to thicken a tiny bit.
Do we want to do a mini sample? Like
No.
throw something in
Let's
there?
just pour it.
Okay.
I told her it's going to be unpredictable.
Okay.
Okay.
As
If
long as
anything,
she's not gonna be crazy about it.
I don't think she will. If anything, maybe just don't put as much black as her photo shows to try and compensate for
Yeah.
how much it's going to take over.
Yeah.
And I'll put the drawing she put up in.
Yeah,
Okay.
throw it in there and we'll, I guess we can start,
Do we have-
calculate and start mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you just like filming my face?
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at it, like it doesn't look like the ones downstairs. It's this is brighter. And that is just black. Okay.
thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
So do we do 2 buckets blue, 1 bucket black?
No. Half
No?
and half.
Okay.
Midnight Blue Color Effects dye. You got blue Epoxy dye, royal blue pigments for us, and steel gray pigment.
So as you heard, this is something a little bit different and I guess risky maybe is what you would call it, because we don't have ultimate control over the way that this resin is going to mix and form the pattern. When resin cures, because it's a chemical reaction, it generates heat, and then that heat creates convection currents, so kind of similar to what you see in the clouds where you get all those bubbles and movement. That same process is happening within the resin as it cures, and depending on the volume you pour, sometimes it happens more or sometimes it happens less, and that's why we have no control over these patterns. Now there is a way to add a little bit more control to this. You can come back to your resin pour, let's say after about 12 hours when it's partially cured, and you can go at it with a popsicle stick to manually influence the patterns, but in our opinion they almost always look man-made, so we prefer to just let them do their thing.
I'm thinking leave these until after lunch, and then we go ahead,
We can pour them if we need it.
pour them back in where we think we need it.
It's going to settle out a bunch. If there's an area where the black is overtaking the blue, we can add a little more blue to that side to try to knock it back, just so it looks nicer. Yeah. It's going to soak up a little bit more, not a lot. Like
We
we're
got a pretty
sitting,
good split right now.
I think we're sitting just a little over 3/4.
You want it to be a specific color? Style you're looking for.
So that pour took 7 days to cure because we used our Black Forest Deep resin. It's a little bit longer than some of the other resins on the market, but that's why we can pour thicker than any of the other resins on the market. The slower your cure, the more time that heat has to get generated, and the thicker volume you can pour. Essentially, if you have too much heat generated in a short amount of time, that resin can get so hot that it will start boiling the moisture out of your wood, and then if it's really bad, when it cools down and shrinks, it can completely crack right down the middle, and essentially you have a ruined table on your hands. So once we flatten the piece off, we remove that excess layer of resin, then we can cut it down to its final size. Before this slab went in the mold, it was built an inch oversized in all directions. So that's what you're seeing Randy take off here right now with the track saw, is just about an inch. And it just makes the entire sanding and finishing process easier because we don't have to try and get those uneven tape marks that are left on the outside edge of the table from our mold out. We can just have a nice clean cut surface to go and sand on. This is like a blast from the past for me because in real life, we actually have our new sander set up now, and it's going to be one of our next videos coming out. But here's the piece going through this old school sander without a planer head. Don't know what we did before it, but we made do. And from there, we're using our sander starting at 120 grit, working all the way up to 320 grit to take out all of the marks from our CNC machine and the marks from the drum sander. And as a standard on our tables, we like to add a 2mm 45-degree bevel to all the outside edges. So it's not a very big profile. Like some of the tables I see on social media, there's giant roundovers or big bevels that are really popular. But a lot of our customers have come to like this really soft bevel because it still maintains that nice, thick, chunky profile of the table, but it just takes off those sharp corners. Then once we have our sanding completed and our bevels put on, it's time to fill in all of those imperfections using a combination of epoxies. So for the first round of fills, we typically use our Black Forest Coat Thin resin. It takes 24 hours to cure, but it is capable of filling some small to medium-sized voids. After that, we use our Black Forest Quick Fix epoxy. It only takes about 15 minutes to cure, but it's mostly well suited for those really small voids. And once all of that has been taken care of, we can get this piece lifted upstairs into the finishing area to begin applying our Black Forest furniture oil. So this is an oil product that we had formulated a few years ago now after spending many years trying all of the different oils that were available on the market. And what we have here is something that we feel is a really good blend of our favorite attributes we've seen in other products. So there were some products on the market we used that had a really beautiful look and they were easy to get a nice high shine, but what they sacrificed was durability. And then there was other products that had the durability we wanted, but they were more of a matte finish and it was quite difficult to polish them up and get a really nice, satin or semi-gloss finish even. So with our furniture oil, it does take, let's say, a little bit more experience or finesse to apply than some of the other oil products on the market. You have to try it a couple times to get used to it. And the reason for that is it's slightly thicker because it has a higher solid content with less solvents in it. But because of that, we get the protection we want, and we're really able to build a beautiful sheen on this piece, which you'll see towards the end of the video when we get this table outside. This, in my opinion, was one of the best finishes we've done in quite some time, and our customer, I know, is just going to love it. So for our application process, we begin our first coat just rubbing it directly onto the surface, and then we remove any excess that's needed, and from there we use a white Scotch-Brite pad on an orbital sander to even out all of the oil that we've applied to the surface. You could essentially just do this by hand where you rub it on by hand and wipe it off, but it's going to be much more difficult to get it looking even. You're probably going to see some of the streaks you've left from your cloth or your rag, whereas by using the sander, it's just nice and easy to get that uniform finish. In between coats, we like to sand with a relatively high grit, somewhere between 1,000 to 4,000 grit, because it knocks down any of the imperfections and also takes out some of the swirl marks. So after that second coat of oil has been applied and we've allowed this piece to cure for 7 days, then we can come along with our Black Forest ceramic coating as a final layer of protection on this piece. Not only is this going to protect it and help increase the durability against stains and scratches, but as you can see, it beautifies the piece too. So over the wooden sections, it really brings out the contrast and shows more of that natural color, and over the resin, it increases the clarity. Now before you guys get to see the finished product on this table, we need to create the base. And this client has went for one of our signature designs, which is our X base. This is probably our most popular base option that we offer for a couple reasons. Obviously, it's a really beautiful looking base as a finished product, but the functionality it offers is unmatched to a lot of the other designs that we've done. You can essentially get seating around the entire perimeter of the table with nobody hitting their knees regardless of where they're sitting. Some of the other more standard table bases you may have seen us do, where it's just two square steel frames on either end of the table, they're really nice because they have a minimal design, but you have to get a little more strategic with your seating arrangement because someone might end up either having that leg right in between their legs or bumping into their knees, which really just isn't that comfortable. So once we have this base glued up and all the joinery cut, we can take it upstairs to apply the black and finish. Now, woodworkers are torn on this. Some people think this is like sacrilege and that you should never enhance or change the natural color of wood, but other people really like the sleek modern design that this black and finish gives. So I'm curious to hear what you guys here on YouTube feel, what the majority of commenters are going to prefer. Do you think we should have left this base natural, or do you like the black and finish that we've applied on here? Personally, I quite like the black and finish because I think it helps the base almost hide in a way, because the feature on this piece is obviously the top. That's where all the action is. The base, I think, should be subtle and minimal, which I feel this X-Base does a really good job of accomplishing. Now we have two variations of our X-Base that we offer, and it's determined by the size of the table we're building it for. So this is the big configuration, which is going to include these aluminum dowels as additional support just to prevent any movement or rocking on the tabletop once we have it fastened to the base. The smaller version of this is for tables that are under 12 feet long, and the only difference is there's no dowels, it's just the straight X-Base. So we just buy this aluminum dowel stock. It comes to us raw as it is, and we mount it on the lathe to help get a polish on it, and that's essentially it. We have a couple recesses that you'll see later that are cut into the X-Base, so these have a slot that they can physically mount into, and they've been quite effective at reducing that wobble I mentioned, because we tested X-Bases in the past where we didn't have these dowels, and what would happen if you were walking and you kind of bumped into one of those outside corners, you'd get this wobble effect on the entire tabletop, and sometimes it would take like 5 seconds to actually stop, but by putting these dowels in, it really stiffens everything up and prevents that. Now, as a surface finish on these, all we're going to do is sand them up so they have kind of this brushed finish, and then we apply our black forest ceramic coating just to prevent any tarnishing or color change on the aluminum. And finally, we can start to put this tabletop together. Now, this is something we don't talk about too often in our videos because it all happens in like 20 to 30 minutes, but is how long we physically spend working on these pieces. So we checked that once we finished this piece. It was about 5.5 weeks that we spent physically working on this table. So in terms of hours, you might have somewhere from 100 to 150 hours, and they're not all spent consecutively. At any given time, there's usually about 10 to 12 different projects on the go in our shop. So every day, each piece gets a little attention, depending on which stage of the process it's at, and it's usually around that 4 to 6 weeks that it takes for us to build one table. Now, that doesn't include our lead time on our pieces. This table was ordered, I believe, 6 to 8 months ago. We are quite fortunate in that we have a lot of customers wanting our products, but it does require some planning on our clients' end to make sure that they have enough time for us to build these pieces so they can receive them. And if you guys are interested in commissioning your own Black Forest piece, we have a link in the description to our quote form. Essentially fill that out, you put in some details of the piece you're interested in, we'll get back to you with a rough estimate, and if it's in your price range, we will go through the rendering process, the material selection process, and completely custom tailor this table to what you want it to be.
Okay, Randy. Jesus fucking Christ. This is actually good. You probably feel better now.
God, Curtis, you missed a spot.
Well, we've got another table here that's ready to ship off to our customer in California. This is a slab of Clara walnut that we actually had to change on the customer partway through the manufacturing process. Originally, she had a different layout that we'll put up on the screen right now, and those slabs were wet. We had them in the kiln for a long time and the moisture wasn't going down, but the client obviously needed her dining table. So we swapped her into this option, which in my opinion, might be even nicer, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments below if you like the original layout that she had or you like this new layout that she picked. Of course, on this piece, we finished it all with our Black Forest products. So we've got the furniture oil, the ceramic, we have the resin in here, and something a little different on this piece was the way that we applied the base layer. Normally, it's just one color for the base layer, but this client wanted two colors, so we've got our midnight blue or manganello blue, and then smoky gray, and they fade in this really neat gradient into each other. So again, let us know what you guys think of this piece. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.